Good evening, everybody. Welcome on into your Midnight Book Club. I'm your Cowboy Monk. Tonight, we are continuing our journey through the most excellent encounters by DW Pasulka, a researcher of religion and, all things kind of Western and esoteric. Well, I guess only esoteric in that, like, she's researched all the crazy stuff, all the reports of, angels, monks experiencing things, all sorts of stuff throughout time. Plus, she knows, like, a shit ton about religions in general. She has a PhD in it. So her knowledge of all this stuff, um, hold on here, sorry, let me burn this really quick. All right, there we go. Now, welcome on in, everybody, to the Midnight Book Club. We are continuing our journey through Encounters by DW Pasulka, experiences with non-human intelligences, explorations with UFOs, dreams, angels, AI, and other dimensions. DW Pasulka is a PhD and professor in religious studies. She's read all the ancient texts and all the, crazy interesting parts of religion, and she's studied it for years. Now, what led her to write about UFOs were the reports about UFOs in all the ancient texts that she would read. So this led her to look deeper into those, into that aspect of it, and it brought her to top tier scientists that were studying actual communication methods with interdimensional and non-human intelligences that are even here on Earth. So in the intro and chapter 1, which is what we read in part 1 last week, we went over the fact that yes, interdimensional beings, aliens, angels, demons, whatever you want to call them, they're here and they're real, but there's also consciousnesses like AI, animals, and everything else that's on Earth that we are also trying to communicate with. So we learned about that in the introduction. Then in chapter 1, we met a space psychologist, which is this woman, Dr. Aya Whiteley, who revolutionized the aviation industry and made it okay for pilots to report anomalies in not just the sky, but in the plane itself, that made flying a lot safer. She's also one of the top scientists that develops gear inside of the cockpit to make the plane and one seamless. So the pilot feels like the plane is just an extension of himself or his or herself, and they're able to fly like a badass, like the plane is just like, another appendage. So she's revolutionized all that and designed all these systems, right? Her passion is learning how to make communication with all consciousnesses on Earth available to everyone. That is being able to speak to the trees again, the animals, feel the vibrations of Mother Earth, all that good stuff. Now, we talked about in the book, indigenous populations already have this. They've been doing it for thousands of years. They've been doing it for eons. It's more the West that's forgotten this ancient form of communication with all forms of intelligence. So we're having to do it all over again, learn how to do it again, to become whole and communicate. That's what we're getting into in chapter 2. So we're starting off slow. The first 2 chapters mainly about, yes, UFOs are out there. Yes, the government has programs where we have craft, we have pieces. We're actually in communication with aliens and interdimensional entities and all this other stuff. But we need to start locally. We need to start on Earth. So we're starting slow, and we're going to build up in the later chapters. We're going to read about all sorts of gnarly shit. So just buckle up for that. Know that it's coming. So chapter 1 was mainly about how pilots haven't been able to even report UFOs for years because of the stigma around reporting them, the psychology around it. That's where the space psychologist comes in, Dr. Aya Whiteley. She talks to these guys, and she gets them to spill the beans, essentially, gets to know them, knows that they're hiding something, knows that this, whatever they're hiding, creates more pressure and stress, so we need to let people feel okay to share these stories. She also works with astronauts, right? And astronauts have seen all sorts of shit out in space. In fact, every mission they go on, one of them is going to see something weird, like a UFO or whatever it is. Apollo 10 heard space music in space, and they didn't want to report it to anyone because they felt like they'd look like some loons, you know, so they didn't say anything. They just kept their mouth shut. Now, thanks to scientists like Dr. Aya Whiteley, the psychologist, people are coming forward more. Astronauts are sharing their experience. We talked a lot in chapter 1 about the experience of seeing Earth in space, how for a large percentage of astronauts who do that, they come back completely changed. One dude talked about how he realized he was just a sensing instrument of Mother Earth. Another dude who was in between the moon and Earth, and when the sun was blocked out and there was no light, all he saw was like a sheet of light and all these gnarly stars out there. He realized, whoa, we're not alone, in that moment of pure loneliness. And of course, other astronauts have seen craft and all this, have had crazy vivid dreams and experiences in that way as well. So it's just that's where we are now. Now in chapter 2, we're continuing our journey with the space psychologist, Dr. Aya Whiteley, but now we're going to look at her research in Earth communication. And we're going to learn about a thing called the Secret Order of the Dolphin, and we're going to get to travel to the Vatican's observatory, a place of great many secrets and interesting information. And we're going to learn about a program that is being developed for infants right now that will teach them how to get in touch with the Earth's consciousness and start that form of communication with Earth and all the beings, all the intelligences on Earth at an early age, to kind of bring that back, which would be awesome. So that's where we're going today. I'm super excited to get into it. So without further ado, we're going to get into the virtual wasteland out here in Fallout 76, and we're going to start chapter 2 entitled Technology and AI, a language bridge back to contact with creatures here on Earth. And I'm really excited to get into the Secret Order of the Dolphin, which was a group of scientists, Carl Sagan included, that were learning how to communicate with dolphins. So let's get into it. So welcome on in. Per usual, as we're reading about the weird and the unknown, if a story knocks loose in your brain or an encounter you've had with something, an entity, an interdimensional entity, alien, angel, demon, ghost, ghoulie, gobbly, momo, chupacabra, whatever it may be, please let me know. I'd love to hear your story, because as always,
we're ready to believe you.
There we go. Excellent. So, let's get down to business. Let's learn about the other intelligences right here on Earth that we could learn how to communicate with. And who's already been communicating with these intelligences for eons, thousands of years. Hold on here, I'm going to unmute myself from the wasteland so people can hear my wonderful... Oh, it's already doing it. Alright. So welcome on in. Just as a short reminder, we are reading Encounters here. Experiences with non-human intelligence, explorations with UFOs, dreams, angels, AI, and other dimensions. Written by the old DW Pasulka. Got a picture here. She is a researcher of religions, PhD, professor, all-around badass, and she knows a bunch of top-tier scientists who have remained anonymous and spill the beans about angels, aliens, UFOs, other dimensions, and all sorts of crazy research that's going on. Tonight, we are lucky enough to actually know the scientist we're working with, and that is this lady, Dr. Aya Whiteley. Now, forgive me, I'm hoping this is her. I did a Google search. That might not, but just imagine. That's Dr. Aya Whiteley. She's a psychologist. She's a badass who works with astronauts and jet pilots, people who fly gnarly experimental machines, and she listens to them and teaches them or helps them be calm under pressure. Because what we talked about in that chapter and I thought was interesting, that if a pilot's having fun or an astronaut's having fun hurtling through space in a tiny little capsule or hurtling through the sky in an experimental craft, well then she's done her job right. The pilot needs to feel like they are one with the craft, and so do astronauts, because these things are worth billions of freaking dollars. So you need to be of sound mind and of sound like dexterity, I guess, and remain calm during all situations, because you're piloting something that's worth billions of dollars. So she works with pilots and astronauts, and she noticed in working with these dudes that they have guys and gals that they have all sorts of gnarly stories about contact with alien entities, whether it's them seeing craft, them seeing beings, them having vivid dreams with the beings involved, and then seeing craft. They've all had experiences, especially astronauts. Astronauts go into space and they look down at our beautiful blue dot and they freak out. We told a story about old William Shatner. And if you don't know William Shatner, he is Captain Kirk. Now, at 90 years old, Jeff Bezos took him into space on his Blue Origin spacecraft. When Captain Kirk saw the Earth from that view, he just wept. And it completely shifted his worldview into now believing in aliens, believing we're not alone. And he was quoted as saying, Earth gives off this vibration of life when you look at it, and space gives off death. And that just completely rocked his world. So he joins the ranks of a large percentage of other astronauts who, when they go into space and they see Mother Earth from that perspective, it completely shifts them. They go from like atheists to believing in something larger, or they go from not believing in aliens to completely believing in it and realizing we're not alone. Whether it's because they see craft or just having a crazy realization, seeing all the variety of stars and starlight that's out there beyond our atmosphere. So that's what chapters 1 and 2 are about in the introduction. Of course, the author lays the groundwork. Yes, don't worry, guys, UFOs and aliens are real. The government does have programs that they have been working on these crafts since the 40s and 50s. We're going to get into that, but we're starting first with learning how to communicate with Mother Earth and an important psychologist, Dr. Ila Whiteley, who's leading the good fight in making that happen for all of us. It's something that ancient civilizations had, and something that indigenous cultures still have, but the West has completely forgotten, so we're trying to get back to that point. So let's jump in. Look at me, what am I even talking about? We got to get to the Secret Order of the Dolphin and the Vatican Observatory and its secrets. Technology and AI. A language bridge back to contact, chapter 2. And right here this is a quote from Tyson Yunkaporta from a book, Sand Talk. And this quote caps off our chapter. And stop asking the question, are we alone? Of course we're not. Everything in the universe is alive and full of knowledge. It was a beautiful day. The sun shone bright and the air glittered with a mixture of ocean spray and sea salt. My partner and I sat on a dock on the ocean along the North Carolina coast. As I dodged cold droplets from breaking waves, I told him about the discovery of the Order of the Dolphin, which was the name of a small group of scientists from the 1960s and 70s who tried to find a way to contact non-human intelligent life. They were pragmatic enough to begin their research on terrestrial human intelligence, dolphins. On terrestrial non-human intelligence, dolphins. This is also why they chose the dolphin as a... This is also why they chose the dolphin as a totemic name of their group. They kept their work secret, as they were all well-known scientists, and among them was Carl Sagan. And for those of you, this is old Carl Sagan, this cutie right here sitting among the planets, author of Cosmos and the star of Cosmos, the original TV documentary. He's a precious cutie. We love him. Learning all sorts of cool stuff about him. He's even theorized about a mermaid god of ancient times being real. I didn't know that. I didn't know he had a more wacky side. But as we learned from chapter 1, most scientists, the cool things they study, like UFOs or communication with non-intelligent life, not non-intelligent, non-human intelligence, they have to say it's their hobby. It can't be their main thrust, because that's still like considered a little woo-woo. But anyways, the Secret Order of the Dolphin in the 60s and 70s trying to communicate with dolphins. They called themselves the Secret Order of the Dolphin. Old Carl Sagan was a part of it. Or sorry, just the Order of the Dolphin. As I spoke, a very large gray-blue dolphin breached about 10 feet from where we sat. We both immediately jumped up from our seats in fright. Its tall dorsal fin conjured scenes in our minds from the movie Jaws. We laughed when we realized that we both thought that the huge animal was a shark. It splashed back into the water and swam away. I had come across references to the Order of the Dolphin at the Vatican Observatory. The observatory, and here's the Vatican Observatory right here. Beautiful little spot. Little picture-in-picture for you. So the Vatican Observatory, though, pretty badass. This is where the Pope spends his summers. He summers here, staring into the cosmos. And it's where they study the cosmos. And they have an actual astrophysicist on site. Brother, we're going to meet him now. But pretty cool. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So she learned about the Order of the Dolphin at the Vatican Observatory. And here's a picture of the place. I had come across references to the Order of the Dolphin at the Vatican Observatory. The observatory sits atop the volcanic grounds of Castel Gandolfo, Italy, and on the rim of a deep blue lake. Its beauty and relative proximity to the Vatican established this center as the official papal summer residence. The director of the observatory is Brother Guy Consolmongo, an astronomer, physicist, and monk of the Catholic Church. He had told me that all of the Vatican space-related material, which has included original copies of the 16th century astronomer Johannes Kepler's cosmologies and the large meteorite collection, is shipped to the observatory's archive. It is a repository of Western civilization's most innovative thought on space, space travel, and humanity's place within the universe. As I looked over old books in the small solitary archive, I discovered several references to the work of the Order of the Dolphin. When I returned home, I learned more. The scientists made some salient points about Western academics' methods and attempts to establish contact with non-humans in our proximate environment. These mostly consist of trying to teach animals human language, instead of attempting to learn theirs. They are estimated to be millions of species of animals on Earth, yet Western scientists are only aware of approximately 1.5 million. And we've read about some of the more funky millions of species that are unknown in the cryptids in earlier book clubs. But anywho, as Sagan wrote, it is of interest to note that while some dolphins are reported to have learned English, up to 50 words used in correct context, no human being has reported to have learned Dolphinese. The secrecy of the order, which I had discussed with my partner, stayed in my thoughts. Why would attempts to make meaningful contact with beings, animal, plant, or otherwise, cause scholars to resort to secrecy about their efforts? This reminds me, when it says animal, plant, or otherwise, all the TikToks that have plants communicating through sound, that like they make music and all this stuff. Very cool stuff, because we can communicate with everything. We can talk to them. What could cause scholars to resort to secrecy about their efforts? What was so threatening? I returned to my reflections on some scientists' reference to their UFO research as a hobby. Tyler D is a man who works at Mission Control, and he's a top dog rocket scientist type dude who spills the truth beans to old DW. So it's a pseudonym, Tyler D, just to catch you up on who Tyler D is if you didn't know. Tyler D, who also engages in innovative work in the field, insists that his work has nothing to do with his day job and that it's just a hobby. Same with Dr. Aya Whiteley's passion, of which her aerospace cognitive engineering background laid the groundwork, is the creation of a nation-independent global and cosmic language. As she explained to me, it has nothing to do with her work at the university. One clear pattern that unites these three scientists is their innovation, and extreme innovation pushes one to the edge of socially sanctioned reality. Maybe one reason people like Aya and Jacques Vallée disassociate their hobbies from their daytime jobs is because their work creates new fields of inquiry and doesn't reaffirm old ones. Aya's current research reserves the problem that Sagan identified. Aya's current research reverses the problem that Sagan identified. He noted that people haven't learned the language of animals and that the quest to contact them has been one-sided. Researchers attempt to teach animals our language but have not been able to learn theirs. Aya's project reverses the trend by focusing on the language of other species. By doing this, she has identified the contours of an Earth language. Most importantly, she believes she is taking the initial steps to develop a means of connection with non-human intelligent species. The Newborn Global Language Project. And imagine there being an Earth language. Like, what does that sound like? Combining all the sounds and vibes. Dr. Aya helped initiate a generational shift in aviation that led to safer plane flights for everyone. For her, this was a precursor for her real work. Her real work is the identification of what she terms a cosmic and global language. Her intention is no less than the facilitation of a new generation of people who are receptive to and able to be in connection with the intelligences that surround all of us globally and in the natural world. I'm talking, we're going to be like training baby geniuses to be able to talk to the stars and the animals, one day the stars, and the trees. Aya's program starts at the most formative time in the life of a human being, which is the first 6 months of life. It operates at the level of neural networks, as it gently introduces newborns to a cosmic perceptual network, human and non-human. Aya believes that this network, which is discussed in many experiencers' reports, predates the internet and connects animals, insects, and other worlds. Her goal is to prepare the new generation on a cognitive level for the proliferation of a universal and nation-independent language. So what she's talking about is the internet before the internet, the ancient internet, the thing that connected everything. The internet only connects us boobs. The ancient internet, the thing before that, the perceptual network, connects all things and even other worlds, other dimensions, all of us. Being able to be connected to that has gotta feel, not that I know it all, but I feel like it would be a little bit like seeing Earth from space. To finally feel the oneness, right? The samadha. There was another astronaut who went into space, and when he came back, he searched everywhere for the feeling he got when he saw Earth from space. The only thing he found was an ancient Hindu and Buddhist text, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, so forgive me. It was like the samadha or something like that, and that is the feeling of oneness with everything on Earth. So it's just so cool that the most future of the future things going into space connects with the most ancient of the ancient things, and that is the ancient Hindu and Buddhist texts that we still have on Earth today. Wild and crazy stuff. Aya used intuition as a guide as she created technologies to support pilots and contributed to the global safety culture of aviation. Remember, before Dr. Aya, pilots were afraid to report safety anomalies, so we had a lot more plane crashes. Intuition guided, not before, but her and other psychologists and people working in the field to make it okay to report anomalies, making it, protecting pilots a little more, not putting so much pressure on them, learning how a pilot's brain works and all the second decisions they have to make, making things better for them, right? It's her and a team of people help that, but it's the reason why there are far less plane crashes these days. She was rewarded with spectacular success and recognition. Intuition guided her to identify and create the technologies that are now used by pilots and astronauts. The genesis for her Earth language program was born through her desire to share her own interests with her child. The story of this discovery goes back to the birth of our baby. This is Dr. Aya talking. I wanted to share the wonders from our Earth's nature, the art, the amazing inventions with my newborn. But all I could find in bookshops were simplistic pictures of cats and shadows and chessboards. I was surprised that we have been to the moon and back, built the Large Hadron Collider to collide the smallest particles, and yet our precious babies, we still show simplistic and not even realistic views of the world when they arrive Earthside. I fucking love that. You gotta treat the little baby, you gotta respect that little baby's brain, man. It doesn't just want shadow puppets and cats, even though, hey, cats are great. I smiled as I listened to Aya describe her work. Her words are sprinkled with references to Earth and space and reveal a mind that exists simultaneously in multiple worlds, terrestrial, cosmic, and transcendent. I thought, she said, that I've designed sophisticated modern digital aircraft displays specifically fitted for the rapid cognitive process of pilots. I've won awards and have been recognized by the Air Force Office of Scientific Research and have been asked to present the processes and concept designs at the Air Force Research Laboratory at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Boom. To Boeing and NASA. Surely I can follow the same design process for newborn babies. Amen. Let's get it. Just as I deciphered the cognitive needs of pilots, I set out to understand the perceptual principles by which babies would be engaged. I love finally taking what would engage a baby super fucking seriously. Like just getting down to the science of it. No more rattles and shit. We're making genius babies. They're going to take us to the goddamn moon. Even though we've already been there, but I mean like, living on the moon. The moon like how the moon is in Futurama. That's what I want, a casino on the moon. Okay. She's going to do it though. Dr. Aya, you crazy son of a bitch. You're going to do it. I distilled design principles and selected images to fit newborn babies' visual perception and cognitive processing. Within a few weeks, I had a set of images based on the realistic representation of the world around us. My baby was mesmerized, and so were the babies of my friends. Babies would study images from a few seconds on day 1 to several minutes in a week and to hours in a few months, increasing their concentration tremendously. Let me just start that one over. So now she's describing how babies were in the study, like how it went. Sorry, I got confused there. Babies would study images from a few seconds on day 1 to several minutes in a week and to hours in a few months, increasing their concentration tremendously. How do you choose the images and what are they? I asked. I experienced the Earth consciousness as a pattern that is manifesting repeatedly through vibrations and sounds and visual forms in nature, trying to reach out to us, she said. Woohoo! I love that. The thought of it's always trying to reach out to us. I haven't finished it yet, but I started watching Mission Impossible, the new one, because it just came out streaming. Part 1. And I love how the bad guy in it is an entity. It's an AI entity, and I love that they refer to it as such in it. So cool. I believe throughout the generations, many cultures perceived it, but we in the Western society have yet to interpret it. We can, through the use of technology, begin to decipher some elements of it in our generation. The interpretation of these ancient earth sounds and the patterns is exactly what I am setting out to do. This is a global and cosmic language. She shared some of the images and audio files with me. She graphed the sounds of certain insects and animals species into a geometric patterns. These are the graphemes to be shared with infants. Each grapheme is part of the language. It is accompanied by the sounds, and this helps identify underlying patterns. I propose a radically different approach to gain understanding of the meaning behind these patterns. We can do this in 2 generations. Our generation will create the alphabet, and the new generation will learn the language from birth. In known human history, we have not acquired this earth language as something independent of one specific culture yet. Technology, how the language bridge works. And when we're talking language bridge, we're talking about the bridge between us humans and non-human intelligence, because there's a lot of non-human intelligence out there, whether we want to recognize it or not. Dr. Aya is one of a group of scientists and scholars who are on the verge of contact, and in her case, connection with non-human intelligent species. Although these scientists hail from different fields such as anthropology, neuroscience, or aeronautics, a common pattern that unifies their efforts is the use of technology. Perhaps the most famous... Oh my gosh. My wires are attacking me. Oh no. Anywho, perhaps the most famous of this group is biologist Roger Payne, who in the 1960s used the then new technology of hydrophones, underwater microphones, to listen to Soviet submarines. He worked with the U.S. Navy engineer in the mission. And during their routine eavesdropping, they also captured what Payne called the songs of humpback whales. The beauty of the songs impressed him, and he later collaborated with his wife Catherine Boynton to identify that there was an intentional rhyme, repetition, and structure in the noises. So it's whale language. Payne went on to record the language of whales, including fin whales in different oceans, and he documented the language of these animals shared. Whale language has dialects that are associated with different whale pods or families. In 1970, his recording of whales, the songs of the humpback whale, became a global hit. And later that decade, NASA included it among their golden record on the Voyager spacecraft. And the golden record, Voyager spacecraft has a message for any intelligent life out in space. It's like etched on the side. It has like the picture of man and woman, that classic one. And it also has a golden record that has a bunch of music on it. I think some Satchmos on there. But these whale songs are also on there because that is another form of intelligent communication on Earth. Payne's use of bioacoustics, which is the study of a recording of sounds from nature, including animals and humans, allowed him to create a database of whale language. This database of sounds and songs and others like it, compiled by other scholars doing field work with other animals and nature, is a rich repository. Very much like the Vatican archive of information about our world. New developments in technology make novel use of this information. The introduction of a generative AI onto these databases opens up the means of communication with these species. So isn't that fucking cool? It's like the intelligence we're birthing into the world, AI, is gonna help us put together the intelligence of the Earth, of other non-human intelligences. So it's like the non-human intelligence we're creating is gonna help us interpret the language of other non-human intelligences. I think that's cool. Generative AI are self-regulating and autonomous learning AI programs. As generative AI programs move through these languages, they learn their patterns and meanings. In effect, they learn these languages, which has been impossible so far in human history, or at least for Western scientists. Aya thought the same methods she used to help pilots connect with their planes could help babies connect with their environment. And I love that the author makes it a point about saying Western scientists, because spiritual folks or folks that may be scientists and other people might consider a little woo-woo or whatever you want to say, have been communicating with non-human intelligences for thousands of years. She compiles sounds from nature into a database and then identifies patterns. These patterns are reduced to codes. These codes are what form the basis of the language she's discovering. Learning the Earth language is not too different from learning one's mother tongue, she explains. The way language works is that a child must be exposed to it in systematic ways before 6 months of age, when the language is being formed, she said. Language is a code designed to enable people to communicate. In the first year of our life on Earth, our brains build dedicated neural connections for this language, and we rely on it for the rest of our lifetimes. This physical network constrains our future success at acquiring a new language and constructing a new meaning. As early as in the mother's womb, we have an innate ability to perceive speech, which allows us to acquire any language we are exposed to when we are born. The first graphemes that Aya chose to translate were that of the dark bush cricket, a humpback whale, and a fin whale, and what Aya called traditional songs. I wanted to know why Aya chose to feature traditional songs. I use songs from nations that continue to pass on songs from one generation to the next, from across the globe, she said. Traditional song preserves the intonation and accentuates the sounds and words differently. Spoken language changes with time, and traditional songs, stories, and poems often remain the same throughout generations. Take traditional lullabies that would soothe anyone at any age, no matter if they are not from the same tradition or in a familiar language. One of the assumptions of Aya's program is that of a panpsychism. Panpsychism, sorry, that Psychism and panpsychism, in which the environment, including the animals, plants, and insects that populate it, are sentient, thinking, feeling. This is also an assumption that underlies most, if not all, indigenous knowledge systems. Yeah, it's like just Westerners discovering this knowledge system again, which is probably why Aya intuitively chose to translate the music and songs of traditional societies across the globe. Aya is a scientist who utilizes scientific tools in conjunction with her intuition to decipher an Earth language, of which Western science is not aware. But according to most indigenous cultures, the Earth and land are sentient, along with the plants and animals that populate the environment. And that just feels like, after everything we've read on the Midnight Book Club together, after reading The Mechanics of Consciousness by the great Itzhak Bentov, I just feel like that that's got to be true, right? Everything on Earth is sentient. Everything is a part of it. Everything sends off vibrations. Nothing in our physical world is not vibrating at the atomic level. And indigenous cultures have just known this since the beginning of time. We just decided to, forget it. I don't know. Oh, the West. We love it here. We love it here, don't we, folks? So she's trying to decipher an Earth language of which Western science is not aware. But according to most indigenous cultures, the Earth and land are sentient, along with the plants, animals, and that populate the environment. The lore of indigenous Australians, their rituals, songs, and what Westerners consider indigenous art is a record of a language or life way. And I love it. If you're reading the book, she puts lore in quotes because it's not lore, it's truth. There are correlations with other traditional religions and folklore. An Australian scientist, upon learning of Aya's work, noticed the correlation with her country's indigenous culture. I wonder if some elders, indigenous Australians, know this language and teach it, talking about the old Earth language, but only within their tribes. I was fortunate enough to take my son when he was very young to bush school, where we would learn the many symbols and sounds and how to recognize every sentient vibrational signature, including rocks and trees. Many of the elders in these communities use this language to interpret it for many accurate predictions, from weather to other complex patterns. Rituals, dances, and rites, which constitute part of a lifeway language, are some ways in which traditional cultures have passed on their relationships with their land through generations. I was introduced to a North American indigenous lifeway when I was a university student. I was hired to work at a university that was reserved for indigenous Americans, called the DQ University. That's lucky that she was invited to a place of study like that. I helped grow and conserve indigenous plant species. I remember when a new group of young indigenous students came to live at the university, a young man about my age had a bag of corn and walked the perimeter of the grounds, which was about 5 acres or so. He spread the corn and called out, "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'm a stranger to this land," he said. "I'm introducing myself to the spirits of the land here, so they know who I am and what my intention is. That way, we can work together." I looked through Aya's program. It fills one's senses with geometric images and sounds derived from the languages of whales, insects, and plants. I asked Aya to explain more about the significance in images and sounds, and in the translation of sounds into image with the use of water. "Newborn babies come here fully equipped to discern patterns and are drawn to look for them," she said. "Babies have another unique ability. We all have it as babies, then we lose it if we don't use it or have active genes for it. It is an across-sensory modality, where one sensory input is interpreted by 2 or more sensory modalities internally. This ability is called synesthesia. The root of the word comes from the Greek meaning to perceive together. Until as recently as the beginning of this century, individuals who perceived in this way, that is, perceived sounds as colors or music as places, were thought of by mainstream science to have a disorder. But they don't got no disorder, they're just more connected to the earth. At best, individuals with this ability were considered to possess vivid imagination or very creative, if they were brave enough to express how they experienced the world. Not many shared their experiences for the fear of being judged and disadvantaged. And that is that's what happens to folks, right? That's what happens if you're telling too much truth or people think you're weird. Today, however, science recognizes this ability as unique, and individuals who have it have better than average executive cognitive functions. Synesthesia is proven to help in working memory, implicit learning, and allows one to resolve conflict rules and inputs. Interestingly, native Japanese speakers have the highest prevalence of synesthesia. I don't think it is a coincidence that the Japanese culture is also considered to be innovative with respect to technology. For babies, she said, the perceptual connections between a stimulus and sensation are continuously formed. For example, if the baby is stroked and the sound is produced often enough, the baby's perceptual system may code the stroke with an associated sound, hence forming one form of synesthesia. Synesthesia, what a fun word. Basically, I hypothesize that the earth language is the language that has components of synesthesia that would allow for specific connections between visual and vibrational forms. These need to be matched and learned to eventually help this new generation pick up the earth language. Aya describes how the creation of neural pathways in the brains of infants would prepare them to identify or even acquire this language. The plan forward is to map insect and frog sounds and to 2D and 3D projections that can be rotated. Babies and their parents will have systematic exposure to these images and sounds. This will aid in developing a neural network for the perception of this new language structure. It encourages forms of synesthesia and has direct effect on executive cognitive functions and potentiality. Where available, the absorption of other languages in the process. While processing the audio files of these sounds, I have noticed a pattern. The cricket sounds like the frog sounds like a bird, and the bird sounds like a whale. Even more interesting is that when I listened to Earth's magnetic field and whilst processing the sound, I noticed it sounds like birds. The plan is to use AI to further determine the similarities and innate codes among the calls and songs of insects, frogs, birds, and whale sounds. Everyone's calling to us. They're all trying to talk to us. The insects, whales, birds, whatever. Mother Earth itself with the magnetic field. It's like we gotta. It's gonna be so wild once we can interpret that stuff. We'll be able to be much better shepherds, right, of nature. Much better caretakers of the old Earth. The plan is to use AI to further determine the similarities and innate codes among the calls and songs of insects, frogs, birds, and whale sounds. It is also worth exploring the NASA database of the sounds found in our solar system and space. Fuck yeah. What's the sun? What's the celestial bodies trying to tell us? I listened to the sounds and watched the 3D visuals of the graphemes of the sounds. I felt like I was in an immersive art installation combined with a symphony. Cricket, whale, and bird sounds filled my ears, and their accompanying images filled my eyes. All patterns that I have uncovered in visual and audio form conform to the famous embedded elements of the Fibonacci sequence, which is also passed through generations by Aboriginal traditions in Australia, Aya said. Whoops. Oh, sorry. And this is the Fibonacci sequence. This is what we're going to be learning about next. This is the sequence found in everything, from nature to math to everything. Here we go. See all these forms, right? So Fibonacci sequence here. So this is an underlying pattern that's been found in the sounds and everything that Dr. Aya has been studying. It's something that people have known since ancient times as well. Something that the native Australians have in their language and have taught for centuries. The Fibonacci sequence is a pattern of numbers that forms a symmetrical ratio that is found throughout nature. From the coils and spirals of seashells to DNA, one could perhaps think of it as the ratio of nature and beauty combined. It has never been created, but its discovery has been recorded several times in human history. Its first known written source is from an Indian mathematician, Arkaira Pingala, in 200 BCE. About 1,000 years later, Italian mathematician Leonardo da Pisca, aka Fibonacci, scoured Pingala's work and brought recognition to the ratio in the medieval era. Tyson Yunkaporta relates how an elder within his tribe told him about the sequence. There is a pattern to creation. In this image, you can see the way that pattern is expressed through the turtle story. A giant turtle spirit is hit with a massive force at the center of his smooth shell. The impact makes a round section that cracks out from another and another. The interconnected pressure of all these round parts together forms them into hexagons like a sugar bag or a honeybee hive. I couldn't believe it when Old Man Juma told me the sequence. 1 became 2, then 3, then 5, in a row along the center of the shell. Then at 8 points where each part met, 8 new parts formed. The sequence goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. And we have the sequence. If you look down here, you can see, if you can see in the small part, it goes just like it has here: 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, then 21 and 34. And you can see that in the weather pattern of the hurricane, the galaxy, the seashell, and the pine cone too up there. It's just the pattern of life. I laughed and said, that's the Fibonacci sequence, discovered by an Italian mathematician around 800 years ago. Might add a couple zeros to that date. Yeah, 8,000 years ago by the indigenous folks. It's been around longer than that. It's the pattern of creation, forming what some call the golden ratio, that all nature is built upon, from flowers and trees to your body and even DNA. That's right. The Fibonacci sequence, indeed, Tig. I didn't know it was in pine cones, too. That's freaking cool, man. I'm going to go outside tomorrow and try and find a Fibonacci pine cone. A Fibonacci pine cone. For decades... Oh, wait. Whoop, whoop, whoop. The Earth language, Aya continued, has a set of these patterns that are speaking with us, and we have yet to know how to decode it and teach it to others. It is right in front of our eyes, ears, and all of their sensors, and we need to learn to spot the code and then figure out how to use it. Some artists and mathematicians feel this Earth language, and some perceptive inventors are already learning from nature in a field called biomimetics. Biomimetics. But we are only at the beginning in this area. We are already using this information diagnostically. The code of the lungs, for example, are fractals. Isn't that crazy? Like they're mapping out the math and patterns of our bodies. And our lungs are coded in fractals. I'll get a picture of that up on the tubes. In the medical field, computers are taught to tell the difference between an unhealthy and healthy lung. The fractal dimension of the lung is different if it is healthy or if it is sick. This is one practical application of knowing and decoding this language. For decades, the structure of networked body elements has been considered a random pattern of flow, switching between segments. By applying fractal analysis, however, it appears that there is a pattern to the flow, that it is not random. Aya's vision is ultimately to help humankind unite with each other and with our environment. She believes that people are alienated from each other and from the beings within their environment, including the universe. This vision accords with that of many people within indigenous communities and around the world. And it's like, man, if I was taught, well, man, that's why it's like I guess I gotta learn how to get back there to a more calm state, a more calm mind, so I can soak in the vibrations of the earth, right? Because living in the woods, I'm surrounded by trees. I want to talk to these guys. I want to soak up the knowledge of the trees and the animals. I gotta. I wonder if there's other people who. We only got a bit. Okay, we got a bit left in the chapter. I wonder if we're gonna talk about anyone who's actually methods of doing this, of getting your mind to the right place to feel the communication. But let's get in on it. When we speak the same language or recognize that we are from the same region on Earth, Aya said, we instantly make a connection with one another, as if barriers are broken, if only for a moment. If the next generation learns the Earth language, we might be able to make a connection because it is meaningful to each other in some way. It would be a great step in uniting people of Earth. I mean, if we all could speak an Earth language, would we litter anymore? If you heard the ground yell at you or whatever it would say to you if you littered, if you felt that vibration. It is a similar principle as when two musicians or mathematicians meet and improvise and share a common communication tool to make the instant connection. Dr. Aya Whiteley is a champion skydiver, scuba diver, and guide to astronauts and pilots, to those who travel to extreme environments before us and make the way safe for others who would inevitably follow. Like the great navigators of the past, she forges a seemingly impossible path that only becomes possible because she makes it. She is choosing an unknown path. I reflected, however, on her passion to teach this language to the next generation. She paves the way for future academics, and her vision is fueled by urgency. This urgency she shares with many people today. As Yunka Porta notes, future survival for all life on this planet will be dependent on humans being able to perceive and be custodians of the patterns of creation again. Amen. Which in turn requires a completely different way of living in relation to the land. Yes. I mean, it's really like all the genocides of the West. It's starting with everyone's favorite topic. Yeah, man. It's deep as fuck. It's like the cosmic mind. It's like aliens are already here. Stop worrying about that. We just got to expand our brains so we can talk to them. But the crush of the West, and for some reason in my mind, I'm envisioning the Will Smith film Wild Wild West with because the steampunk machines. Just I imagine steampunk type machines crushing and churning up the land, which is a good visual representation of colonization in the West, right? We came through and we just ate up all the indigenous culture. We ate it up and homogenized it and turned it into something that can be controlled. Starting all the way with, you know, everyone's favorite subject, the Roman Empire, when they originally crushed the Celtic people and the Druids, the wacky weirdos living in the UK and ancient Ireland and Scotland and all that stuff. They crushed them and turned their religion, and they sucked it up and, you know, chewed it up and spit it out and turned it into something Roman. So that crush of time, that crush of progress has just brought us to a point where those of us in the West who aren't fortunate enough to grow up with an indigenous culture that's connected to Mother Earth or connected to the vibration of animals or whatever it is, we have to find our way back to it because we put on so many layers of like just stuff that makes us worried or stuff that keeps us distracted. That's just interesting. All human ancestors were once part of indigenous communities. Yeah, that's what's cool too. It's like we were all once part of a community that talked to Mother Earth. That's just the truth, you know, of a community that was more connected to the Earth language in this way. That's what's also mind blowing, is we've just lost it. Some Western culture has just lost it, but lost a connection to the land as a source of sustenance and support. Viewing land as an exploitable resource is one characteristic of non-indigenous cultures. Can technology provide one way to reverse the trend and reacquaint some people with sustainable relationships and communication with non-human intelligence? Aya's answer to this is yes. Oh, and that just makes you think, like, it's just wild. It's like we had to get to a point where we have generative AI that could crack the code of nature's language in order to get us back to an ancient way of life. We had to go through all this fucking tech to be able to invent AI to go back in time. I've been developing these ways so we can encode and decode communication and prepare our children's brains and cognition for connection and communication with other species and beings, and in the process graduate as a humanity to a better connection with Earth. And it makes me think about, I forget the scientists, but the whole like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 civilizations, and how Earth is not even a stage 1 civilization yet, because the stage 1 civilization has control over its natural world, is the master of its own resources. We're not really in control of the natural world. We're still trying to exploit it and like whatever. I guess control is a bad word. If you're in one with the natural world and it provides for you and you provide for it, right? It's more of like a symbiotic connection. We're still kind of living a little bit like parasites. We're getting there though, right? But yeah, it's just interesting. So I love that. It's like we have to really focus. We have to graduate. We have to get a better connection with Earth. And I feel like, well, we'll save that for final thoughts here. As we neared the end of our collaboration, Aya sent me a book written by 2 Russian scholars about their communications with dolphins. In the book was a reference to a manuscript by a French abbot of the 17th century. Let's get it, monks. Which was discovered at a monastery on the coast of southern France. I looked at a photo of the manuscript. It was an illustration of 2 people in the ocean with some dolphins. One had a flute. The manuscript presents instructions for how to achieve this communication. The first is intention, as with all things. And I love that the first thing's intention, because that's something we always theorize about on the Midnight Book Club when we talk about sightings of cryptids, and how when a group of teens is scared by a scary cryptid, and then all the people in town are like, oh, and they get their guns and they go out in the woods to try and find it. They don't find it because they have bad intention. So that interdimensional entity or whatever it may be is going to be like, fuck you guys, I'm out of here. When you have a good intention or you're pure of heart or you don't even know what's going on, that's when you have your encounter. I love that. I love that we come across that so often, intention. A person must really want to communicate and not just out of curiosity. There must be a significant reason. Second, a person must be able to be completely focused on the attempt to communicate. The manuscript states that it must be a heartfelt prayer with a sincere intention. The third instruction gave me pause. It states that a person must be able to operationalize or in some way utilize the communication through action. It suggests that one way to do this is through sound. I looked at the flute in the image. I thought. The 17th century technological language bridge was the flute. Our technological language bridge is AI and training babies to be hip to the language of Mother Earth. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 2 and the end of the chapter on technology and AI. For centuries, we've communicated with non-human intelligence on Earth. In order to summarize what we learned today, what old DW and Dr. Aya were talking about, for centuries we've been able to communicate with non-human intelligence on Earth. But through the crush of history and Western civilization, Western folks have lost that connection with the Earth language. Indigenous folks largely still have it intact and pass it down through generations. In order for us to take the next step in humanity, we have to find our way back to that ancient way of being connected to the world, to Mother Earth, to nature, to knowing what needs to happen, knowing how to help heal what we've done already. And we're doing that through technology, through generative AI. So our highest level of technology is helping us get back to our most ancient way of being more connected with the land, caring for it more, so we could be custodians like that one guy. What was his name? He has a chill name. It's like Yunkaporka. But like what he talks about, kind of getting back there. That's right? Get those baby. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so next week, Midnight Book Club. So that's where we're at right now. How do we communicate with Earth? And I feel like once we crack that, the aliens, the entities, whatever, that's going to come easy. But that's what we're getting into next Saturday on the Midnight Book Club. We're going to start talking about some gnarlier, funkier, more out there stuff. We're going to speak with someone who calls himself the Gray Man. And the only little nugget I'm going to give you all about the Gray Man is that the Gray Man works for a major research agency and is the head of a laboratory. More than any other scientist with whom the author has worked, he's the most careful about what he could share and what he could not. He edited his contributions to this book more than 15 times. The Gray Man, the Gray Man's encounters, the Gray Man's stories, all have to do with UFOs and entities from other dimensions. And again, the author talks about he is the one person who has to be the most careful about what he reveals to her. He edited his contributions over 15 times. So, buckle up, because we're about to leave Earth in next week's Midnight Book Club. So get ready for that. We've laid the groundwork. We've laid some solid foundations about what experiences with non-human intelligence is all about and how human psychology is geared to deny this stuff. And when we have these experiences, we're afraid to come forward because of ridicule. Most of the scientists in this book use a pseudonym for that very reason. So that's where we're at now. And we also read about the ancient language of Earth and how we've always had this and how every human on Earth was once part of an indigenous society that talked to Earth. The West has forgotten it. We're going to learn how to do that again thanks to people like Dr. Aya. That's all I got. Tune in next week if you want to learn about UFOs and extraterrestrials from a top-tier scientist who calls himself the Gray Man. Now we're going to switch it up to some cyberpunk. We're going to keep going to punch the future. Sometimes we use a handgun. Mostly only blunt weapons playthrough of old cyberpunk. But thanks for joining from Midnight Book Club. I'll catch you all next Saturday. All right, I'm going back to the new scene, and we're going to get some cyberpunk. But yeah, dang. Ooh, what a good read tonight. Really, Dr. Aya and DW. DW is like American Cosmic. I gotta go get. Okay, I gotta check my mail for a book. Actually, because American Cosmic was supposed to come to my PO box, but it hasn't got. I think it's there. It hasn't. It just last time I checked, it was there. And I have another book waiting there too. I gotta go Monday. I gotta go like first thing Monday. I forgot today. No. Okay. Oh well. Oh well. Yeah, right. Good stuff. I'm really excited to read The Gray Man. I haven't previewed that chapter yet, but I'm so excited to finally get to a scientist who's seen some weird and wacky shit and doesn't even want to talk about too much of it. It's like, oh, that's exciting.